Well, good evening, everyone. A little more formally, but just as heartfelt. I think I know most of you. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Kathleen Doherty, and I am the Executive Director of MOCA Jacksonville. Tonight, we are celebrating, can you believe, the 10-year anniversary of Project Atrium with our exhibition, Imagination Squared to the Power 10, a creative community response to our times. A community exhibition for the community, by the community, with some 663 works of art. We are thrilled to be a convener and a catalyst for our community, coming together to make and create, to reflect, to heal, and of course, to celebrate. This has been a really challenging year for all of us, here in Jacksonville, as well as around the world. But at MOCA, we've also taken it as a time to innovate and to adapt. We've launched virtual experiences just like this one, everything from a brand new digital home, smart online, to new virtual experiences, camps, exhibition tours, and brand new programs and initiatives as well. We've learned that, as we were talking about, there is unlimited potential to reach new audiences online. And we've also learned that there is unlimited need and want for art and creativity to nourish our everyday lives. One of the most exciting initiatives that we've been involved with during these last number of months is an initiative called Meet Me at MOCA. It's a program in which we are serving 5,000 Title I children with visual arts education. In fact, from February till now, we've already served 2,500 and will have reached all 5,000 by the end of this academic year, bringing free visual arts education virtually to classrooms and homes here in Jacksonville, kindly sponsored due to the Jessie Ball DuPont Fund. But we know that there are many more children that still need to be served, many more children that are deprived access to arts education. And so we've opened this program up, we've grown it further. And if you would like to learn more about the program, if you'd like to support and become a sponsor of a child, a classroom, or a school, please don't hesitate to reach out and we'd be happy to give you all the details. Because it's due to the support of our patrons, our patron level members like you, that we are able to continue to provide innovative ways of connecting with art, ideas, the art, artists, and ideas of our time. Without you, our important, impactful work would simply not be possible. We hope that you enjoy this evening and all the other virtual and soon to be in-person experiences that being a MOCA patron member brings you. And if you do enjoy, please encourage others to come along and enjoy with you. Now, at tonight's exclusive Patrons Preview event, we are going to be hearing from a number of special, very special guests, each of whom has been really influential in making Project Atrium what it is today. And I'd like to take a moment to thank and recognize each of them. Firstly, Broken Hap Stein, who unfortunately couldn't be with us this evening, but are our title sponsors for this 10-year anniversary. The Steins have generously sponsored Project Atrium throughout the years. They created the Brook and Hap Stein Emerging Artists Fund, investing not just in creating Project Atrium installations, but further in acquiring works by those artists into MOCA's permanent collection, really having impact and investing in our collection and in our community for years to come. I'd also like to recognize Preston Haskell, former board chair and trustee emeritus at MOCA. Of course, all of Project Atrium installations are installed in the Haskell Atrium Gallery. Preston's investment, support, and passion for MOCA has been influential throughout the years, and his significant endowment has been invaluable to continuing our strength and our growth. And I am thrilled to say that as we march towards our 100-year anniversary in 2024, we're reinvigorating our endowment campaign. And I look forward to many of you getting involved and really celebrating with us. I'd also like to recognize Rick Hawthorne, our immediate past board chair, and the entire Driver, McAfee, Hawthorne and Debenau firm, who have served as supporting sponsors of Project Atrium right from the very start. Dr. Marcel Poleednik is with us this evening too, the Donna and Donald Baumgartner, director of the Milwaukee Art Museum and former MOCA director. Thank you for spending time with us this evening. Thank you for sharing your insights. And as always, I'd like to thank the City of Jacksonville, the Cultural Council of Greater Jacksonville, the Florida Division of Cultural Affairs, and the University of North Florida. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with us. Thank you for sharing this evening. I really hope you enjoy. Without further ado, it is my very great pleasure to welcome the chairperson of the MOCA Board of Trustees, Chad Lebenz, to share some words with you. Thank you.
Thanks, Kathleen, and good evening, everyone. Chad Lebenz, as Kathleen mentioned, I know most of you, some new faces. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm delighted to welcome you to this evening's opening and to join you in celebrating this 10-year anniversary through the Imagination Squared exhibition. For a decade, Marcel, wow, a decade. I remember that starting. The series has provided our community with the opportunity to meet acclaimed national and international artists and to see them in action, installing new site-specific work in the heart of Jacksonville. These exhibitions have always been free to the public to enjoy. Thousands and thousands of children from Jacksonville schools have visited on field trips, have marveled at the scale and variety of the installations they have experienced. And UNF students as well regularly participate in programs, workshops, and classes exploring the ideas presented by the Atrium or the Project Atrium, and have benefited from master classes, workshops, and studio critiques by the exhibiting artists visiting campus. And of course, Project Atrium also provides the artists, many of them emerging or developing in their careers, with a space to create monumental works, often on a scale they have never worked in before. In fact, many of these works have elevated artists' careers and have traveled to other spaces. Right now, for example, Jacksonville-based artist Kedger Volta's work is installed in a major exhibition in China as a result of his Project Atrium installation last year. I've personally enjoyed watching the Atrium series evolve over the past decade, and I'm excited to hear insights from our special guests this evening, as well as the memories shared by you, our patron members. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank the MOCA staff. This has been a year like no other, but despite that, MOCA has continued its important work in service of our community, focused on the arts, artists, and ideas of our time. After tonight's patron event, I would invite you to stay on and enjoy the public preview that starts at 7, led by our curator, Ylva Rouse, to hear from many of the artists who have participated in Imagination Squared. Unfortunately, my two artists or budding artists who are hanging on the wall there are at a swim meet, so they won't be in attendance. Again, thank you for joining us. Without further ado, I'd like to pass the mic, or virtual mic, to our Deputy Director, Ben Thompson.
Thank you, Chad. Thank you, Kathleen. Well, welcome everybody. My role here tonight is really just to help us facilitate through the program and to kind of give you a little bit of an overview of what we're going to expect tonight, and also to manage some of the visual support that we might need as we discuss the 10-year history. And in particular, Marcel, when you are speaking, I'm happy to scroll through and move forward or back as necessary if you'd like. But we have a number of exciting speakers tonight who've been instrumental in Project Atrium. As Chad mentioned, we have a two-phase preview tonight with our patrons preview now and our members preview starting at 7, so please stay on. I think we have I don't know how many people we have registered, but it was over 100 and something last time I checked. So it's going to be a big group. It'll be an exciting discussion. But before that, and I'll kind of go backwards from 7 o'clock, we will leave a Q&A portion at the end of this patrons preview for people to ask questions or maybe talk about their favorite Project Atrium over our 10-year history of the series. And then we'll hear from Marcel Poleednik, who originated the series. It was her vision, and she started the series in 2010. Rick Hawthorne, whose firm has been a sponsor ever since the beginning of the series, has recorded a message, and I'll be playing that. But first, we'll be hearing from Preston Haskell, who is instrumental in almost everything we do, and was instrumental in the adaptive reuse and renovation of our current facility, and has some comments about the renovation of the space, why we chose to construct it and design it the way it is now. The image that you're seeing behind me is how the atrium looked upon my arrival in 2007. And not that there's anything wrong with this image. It's a beautiful space, beautiful, well-lit space in which to display artwork. And as you see, it looks beautiful and austere. And this is exactly how it was when I arrived. But it has so much potential as a space to engage contemporary artists, emerging and mid-career artists, with site-specific pieces, and that's really what Marcel saw in the space upon her arrival. So without further ado, I'd like to hand it over to Preston to tell us more about the renovation of the building and his feelings on the Project Atrium exhibition series. Preston, over to you.
Thanks very much, Ben. I'm delighted to be with you tonight and happy to share a few thoughts and insights about Project Atrium and specifically the Atrium Gallery. As Ben mentioned, the space that is currently occupied by our little theater below the Atrium Gallery, and then the Spanish Steps from the first floor gallery up to the atrium, occupy what was a light well, the old Western Union building, no air conditioning. So to get light and ventilation into the building, it was built as a U-shaped building with the light well in the middle. When MOCA took over the building almost 20 years ago, the team of very talented volunteer architects, there were 19 of them, came together and very thoughtfully and creatively repurposed, redesigned the old Western Union building into the marvelous museum building that we see today. And they filled the old light well with what is now the Atrium Gallery with the theater or auditorium beneath it. I think that was a stroke of genius. It really was a brilliant solution to how do we get a theater and also this wonderful three-dimensional gallery, column-free, open space, into what was a vacant, unused, and needless space in the building. So Project Atrium became a part of the entire museum building in so many ways. You approach it from what we call the Spanish Steps leading up to the atrium floor, but then it also opens up to the second and third floor galleries so that one on the second or third floor can enjoy seeing and being a part of the Atrium Gallery, as well as those who enter it and are in the gallery from the first floor. And so it's a marvelous space with great potential. Sometimes I'm asked how big is it? It is roughly a 40-foot cube. That is 40 by 40 by 40 feet and accommodates, as I said, so many large and three-dimensional objects. When the museum first occupied and opened up in our new building in 2003, for the first several years, The Atrium Gallery was used, as Ben pointed out, simply for large two-dimensional works hanging on its 3 walls. And those were interesting, enjoyable, and very worthwhile pictures on those walls. But Marcel Poleednik, who is with us tonight and whom you'll hear from in a moment, arrived at MOCA. Her vision and her thoughtfulness and her creativeness gave us the Project Atrium, which fully utilized the 3-dimensional space that Project Atrium occupies. It was Marcel's genius that gave us the 3-dimensional works and exhibitions that we are seeing tonight and have been privileged to see over the last 10 years. Marcel commissioned artists and branded the exhibitions as Project Atrium, roughly 3 per year. Each one of them was unique. The artist came to Jacksonville and either supervised the installation or participated in the installation himself or herself. And that's been a great success. And due to Marcel Poleednik's foresight and brilliance and knowledge of exhibitions, we enjoy not just a 3-dimensional gallery accessible from all 3 floors of the building, but also this marvelous series, now in its 11th year, of Project Atrium exhibitions. I welcome you to tonight's opening, and I am delighted to share a few thoughts about Project Atrium and the Atrium Gallery, and I'll turn it back over to Ben at this time. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Preston, and we couldn't have done it without you. You know, it's we owe a huge debt to you for your support over the years, and also to your team that you assembled for the renovation of the building. We have a wonderful space as a result of that collaboration. So I'm going to go ahead and share a video from a sponsor that has seen the merit in this exhibition program since its beginning, Rick Hawthorne, to talk a little bit about their experiences as sponsors of Project Atrium. So give me 1 minute while I pull this up.
I want to thank the current board chair, Chad LeBenz, as well as museum director Kathleen Doherty and development director Katie McCullough, and the entire staff for inviting me to speak to you about Project Atrium this evening, one of my favorite parts of MOCA. For 10 years, in fact, since the inception of Project Atrium, my law firm has been a supporting sponsor. Our sponsorship came about one evening, actually at a party at Ellie and Charles Zimmerman's house. I was speaking to the former director of MOCA, Marcel Poleednik, and she was relaying to me the difficulties of curating exhibitions in the atrium space because of the sheer scale of the space, the fact that it's so deep, so wide, elevated above the lobby, and then the volume of the 40-foot ceiling just makes it extremely difficult to curate exhibitions. So her idea was to create an innovative space for mid-career and younger artists to challenge them to install an exhibition in the entire atrium space, to try to use the space in unique ways that it had never been used before. That seemed exciting to me, and so we, as a law firm, wholeheartedly joined as a supporting sponsor without really, at the time, understanding what the Project Atrium would become 10 years later. From the first installation, which was Melanie Pullen's photography, which was showing crime scenes from the 20th century, but juxtaposed in a strange way where the victims of the crimes were dressed in couture clothing, to Tristan Lowe's Lunacy, which involved a giant felt moon-like object with red glass neon comets flying around the atrium, to more recently Khalid Al-Bai's more ideologically provocative work that really spoke to immigration and the immigration debate in our country today. We really recognize that Project Atrium embodies the mission of MOCA. It really promotes the advancement of the artists, and ideas of our time. Sponsoring Project Atrium has always been a lot of fun for my firm and for our attorneys here. As a supporting sponsor, we've gotten an opportunity over the years to have lunch during the installations of the artists for Project Atrium. Those have been really fun experiences. We've had lots of great conversations. We've gotten to know the artists a little bit personally, which is a fun thing to do. And we've also seen during those lunches the stress of what an installation of the scale that Project Atrium demands on the artists and on the staff of the museum. And to watch how some of these things come together has been really awe-inspiring. So there have been times when equipment's broken. There have been times when they were trying to figure out how they were going to get equipment up the stairs into Atrium. And a few hours later, you go to the preview, and there's no evidence of the carnage that was going on in the atrium and in the lobby a few hours before. So there have been some interesting experiences with that. I would like to close by encouraging you to sponsor MOCA generally and Project Atrium specifically. The sponsorships are so important to the growth of the creative section of our society in Jacksonville more particularly. Also, we revitalize our downtown through support of Project Atrium, and we support our art education, which is such a key role and such a key part of what MOCA is to all of us. So thank you very much for the opportunity tonight. I hope you have a great night, and please continue to support MOCA.
Our thanks to Rick and his firm, who, like he said, have been with us in the series since the beginning. And we can't thank them enough for their commitment to the series over the years. And as he said, it's the firm and his partners and other employees that have come over and engaged with the artists have had some very memorable experiences and have got a lot out of their interaction with the artists over the years, as we encourage the public to do, which is part of the origination of the series. The concept of the series in the beginning anyway is that these artists are doing a site-specific installation in the space, and the public is encouraged to ask questions, to watch the work in progress, to sort of, in essence, be in the artist's studio as they're creating their piece. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it over at this point to Marcel Poleednik, who, as everyone has mentioned up to this point, had the vision to create this series, and we're very grateful for that. Because at that time, we had to add an entire exhibition series to our program. We had to conceptualize that series and the future of that series, and so we're very grateful for her vision. Marcel, I'm going to go ahead and share a presentation that goes through all the artists through the 10 years as you talk and share some insights with us. So I'm happy to scroll through or back, as you need. So
that sounds great. Thank you very much, Ben. I'm so happy to be with you all this evening. It's really, Project Atrium for me is probably the most near and dear experience that I have had as a director anywhere. And I just want to start by thanking Kathleen for inviting me to be part of this evening. And thank you all for your very kind words. I have to say, this was not a project by a single person by any stretch. And Ben knows that well because he was very much in the trenches with me in the early days when we would stand in the atrium and say, what are we going to do with this? And we were trying to really figure out how we could create something that was exciting and innovative and thoughtful and would really launch MOCA's identity as a laboratory, as a place where art became complicated and became messy and became part of the experience of the community in a new and exciting way. So I wanted to start sort of at the very beginning because I remember those early moments so well, even before Melanie Pullen was roped in and she was the first artist we approached. And there were a few key principles that were very important, and then a few individuals who were incredibly important to the beginning of this series. And I want to just recognize them here because this is really quite an astonishing feat to be able to have a 10-year anniversary of a series like this. So let me begin with the principles. And Ben alluded to one of the most important ones, which was that we wanted to really showcase the generous dimensions of this space as a place that all artists had to activate in full. And so the notion was born that if you were chosen to be a Project Atrium artist, you had to figure out how to wrestle with the entirety of the space. You couldn't come in and just hang a single painting on the wall and say, I'm done. You know, you had to really deal with the three-dimensional scope of the space. And one of the things that makes this space so interesting, I think both to curators and artists alike, is that it really functions as the artistic spine of the institution. You not only see it when you walk in the doors of MOCA, but you also, you circumnavigate it as you go through the galleries of the museum. So your perspective on the space changes as you go through the museum, but at the same time, you continue to be drawn to it because it's right there, no matter where you are in the museum, which is really interesting and created for some wonderful opportunities of vistas and landing spaces, visually speaking, that many artists, including Mark Lakari here, really deployed to their advantage. That was important. It was also important that the installation in progress was visible and engageable for audiences, so that we would lift the curtain, if you will, of mystery on contemporary art and really show artists working actively in the space and allow visitors to engage with artists at appropriate moments, ask questions, see them working, as Rick said in the video, see them struggling at certain points to figure out how to deal with this massive space, but really as a way to show artists working in real time and allow visitors to understand what it's like to be an artist and wrestle with this giant opportunity, if you will. So now going back to individuals who are important. So my then board chair, Alan Howard, who's with us tonight, and his beautiful wife, Gwen Gallagher Howard, were one of the first to say, yeah, this is interesting. See what you can do with it. And I was so grateful for that support and for the faith that they had in me and the board and the staff had in me to figure this out. Preston and Joan obviously continue to be dear friends and are with, Preston's with us tonight, and they too understood, and Preston, having worked on this space, understood how much potential it had and how much opportunity was necessary to really make it come to life. And then Rick Hawthorne, and I'll share a funny story about the very party that Rick described in his video, which was, I remember talking to him and saying the very things that he said in that video. What Rick doesn't know is that 30 seconds later, I turned around to our then development director and said, Rick has to fund this. If Rick doesn't fund this, we can't do it. And so that became the test, if you will, for seeing if it had enough resonance that we could actually garner the funds that were necessary to get this off the ground. Because as Ben pointed out, and as any good museum director or professional will tell you, this was an addition to our exhibition program and a significant new wheel that we had to wrestle with in terms of fundraising. Because in addition to all the exhibitions that were happening on the third floor and the stewardship of the collection on the second floor, there was now this new engine within the museum that also had to be fed and nurtured. So let's go back to the beginning. And Ben, maybe you could start with Melanie for a moment. One of the things that became a challenge, and it's a challenge again for any museum director, and I'm sure Kat has experienced this too, you come into an institution and you say, I need to make my mark, right? People have to know that there's new management here, that there's new energy, there are new things. But by and large, you typically are dealt a hand of cards that includes exhibitions that stretch from here for the next few years. And so you have to say to yourself, all right, I can be patient, I can work through these projects, and then finally, 4 years from now, I will unveil my great vision for the institution. And I remember wrestling with this as a first-time director and thinking, how can I do this? And my husband looked at me and said, you have to do something now. You can't wait 4 years. You have to just do it. And so I thought, how can we get Project Atrium off the ground, knowing that the first artist we choose isn't going to have the time to come up with a concept and help design a plan, which over my tenure at MOCA, we ended up getting a very good routine going, in large part thanks to Ben, working with artists And it would take them some time to really figure out how to be able to work with the space. They would come and visit and look at the space and spend some time with the staff and then come back to us with an idea. But to launch a project like this, you had to have an artist who could just go. And Melanie, thankfully, was that right artist. She had a series of works in her studio in LA, and you can see them here. As Rick said very nicely, these were photographs of actual crime scenes, of crimes that were committed in Los Angeles in the 1930s and 1940s. But to restage the crimes, Melanie would dress the victims in high fashion. And so they're called high fashion crime scenes. And often Melanie would shoot these photos at night. And because it's LA and obviously the film industry and the fashion industries loom large in the life of that city, she would just invade various public spaces and set up her shoot. And all she would have to say is action. And, you know, all the people who might have been in that, in her viewfinder would scatter so that she could actually take the photo. She had no permits, you know, none of this was licensed in any way, but the photos were incredible. So we contacted Melanie and asked her if she would consider doing a salon style installation just to showcase, again, the fact that the space is this, this vertebrae within the museum. And she was up to the task. And so off she came to MOCA and all of her works followed. And we spent some time with a cherry picker, which became one of the standing icons of a Project Atrium installation. And we got the thing off the ground. And one of the things that was exciting about that first view of the very first Project Atrium is that the photographs themselves were magnetic, but installed in this way, they did something extraordinary to the space that had never been done before. And immediately our visitors would understand that walking through the museum was part of the experience of seeing Project Atrium. So not only would they look at the images from below, but they would start to navigate the stairwells that you're seeing here, move on to the second floor, move on to the third floor, and they would get more and more of the installation. So something new was happening. And I remember the very first articles that came out about Project Atrium. We were so excited. There was new energy in the air. And then, of course, we were faced with the task of how do you continue this program? Because when you start on a high note, obviously you don't want to disappoint as you move through the process. And so we leaned on another Los Angeles artist, Gustavo Godoy, who created this sculpture that you're seeing here, which is made of all found wood, which he then coated with this metallic finish that you see here. And the sculpture, for those of you who remember, could be actually entered. In fact, one of the photos hanging in my office here in Milwaukee is a photo of me and Ben and Gustavo and Honor Fraser, Gustavo's then gallerist, actually sitting in the sculpture the opening night of Project Atrium. It was really a fun way of breaking one of the great museum taboos, right? We can never touch the work. You certainly can't enter the work in a museum. And so it really set a new tone for also playfulness and invention within the Project Atrium series. I won't tell you about the many chapters and the afterlife of this sculpture, which involved termites and having to figure out how to get rid of those termites and make sure they don't enter the galleries and all sorts of fun things of that nature. But that was par for the course when you were dealing with Project Atrium. And then our third artist in the series, Mark Lakari, came to do a site-specific wall drawing in the space. And he had a vague concept of what he wanted to do, but once he arrived, he was a bit stumped by just the sheer scale of the space and really struggled with figuring out how to be able to translate this very small 4x6 inch drawing into the 40-foot cube that you see here. And this was really the first moment in the series where we realized that this kind of opportunity for emerging artists specifically was really important. And that one of the things that MOCA could do was not only offer the artists the space, but also the support that they needed to take some risks, knowing that not every risk was going to be successful, that not every experiment was going to pan out, but that part of the museum's role as a contemporary art institution was to nurture and support artists and the artistic process. And this was very clear from working with Mark, is that he really was very gun shy about creating this drawing, and we had to really push him and say, it's going to be all right. You just need to get on that cherry picker and go. And one of my favorite memories of the series actually was around this installation. There was a moment when we had I think a second or third grade class who were visiting the museum, and they were on the second floor balcony and they were watching Mark work. And one of the unconventional tools that Mark used, particularly for the watermarks that you see here. So this is a drawing of a water tower that is, was teetering precariously. And then, of course, as you can see, explodes, filling the space with water. And to make that particular water stain, Mark actually used a super soaker water gun. So there he is standing on the cherry picker, and he has this gun that's filled with water and the pigment that he's using, and he just lets it go. And these second or third graders stood there, and the only sound I heard was, whoa. All of a sudden, being an artist became really cool. And I'm sure all of them went home and told their parents that, artists work with super soakers, and isn't it great? And while that never happened again, it was a moment of pure magic. And again, a magic that was afforded by the nature of the space and one of those key principles of Project Atrium, the notion that watching the artist work was deeply important to the series. And Tristan Lowe was actually the first project that Ben had a huge hand in bringing to the museum, having known Tristan's work. And he really spearheaded this initiative. So Ben, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I know that Tristan was one of your favorite projects to work on. So I thought you could share a little bit about this unusual amalgam of different sculptures that were part of the installation.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Marcel. And I do want to leave some time for people to ask questions. We have 30 more artists to go through. So I think what we'll do is we'll kind of go into detail on these first few, and then I think we'll let the slide presentation play, and then we can ask people to chime in and ask questions if they have them while the rest is playing. But like you, I have a very fond memory of the installation with Tristan Lowe, and like you, it was the result of a student tour group of fourth graders. But before I mention that, Tristan Lowe's piece was called Lunacy, and it was a combination of these neon satellites and comets, and this, I believe it's a 13-foot felt moon that was really anchored on the floor surface of the atrium. Fun fact, the moon was not, it was an inflatable, but it was not like other inflatables in the sense that there was actively a fan blowing it up at all times. You had to blow the moon up daily, and to do that, you had to climb under the moon, and you had to disconnect it and take a little membrane off, and then blow it up and put the cover back on. And occasionally the moon would roll over on top of you while you were conducting that maintenance on the piece. So I have lots of fun images of me under the moon, appearing as if the moon is on top of me. But it's always fun in contemporary art and working with contemporary artists, and those are, the memories that we cherish. But this piece had these satellites and comets, and one of the things we were talking about during the installation was the trajectory of the comets coming into the space. And for Tristan, as a Philadelphia-based artist, worked with the Fabric Workshop, I believe is the name of it. And we were talking about the trajectory of the comets coming into the space. And if you mathematically projected that trajectory out, where is the origin of these comets? And we were kind of discussing this installation aspect as this group of fourth graders came in, looking over the atrium glass wall and hearing us talk about this. And they started to engage with us in a conversation about planetary motion and comets and, what these objects meant to the artist. And it's one of my fondest memories at the museum. And it really, that level of dialogue and engagement directly with visitors, and in particular with children, really reinforces the educational mandate that we have as museum professionals. So I think it was, and it's really cool, like Marcel said, and the kids really loved the Super Soaker, and in Mark's piece, they really loved the comets and Tristan's piece. There's always something to love, but we have lots of memories. I will say that there are two programs coming up, one at the end of May and one in June, where I will present some more detailed history about specific projects. I hope to also bring on some of the past artists. It'll be a virtual program, so I'd encourage you guys to keep a lookout for registration for those events and attend if you'd like to. So let's go ahead and just kind of scroll through the rest of the presentation here. And if anyone has any questions, or Marcel, if you have any more observations or comments about specific projects, please just chime in.
I think Ben's right to just turn the floor over to guests to see if there are any specific questions. I mean, every one of these projects has a story. We could be here for quite a while, but Absolutely. One thing that I would mention as we scroll through the images is the other project that is very near and dear to my heart is the Angela Strassheim exhibition, which brought with it MOCA's great First Amendment challenge, as our then board chair, Margaret Gallatley, liked to call it. But it also underscored for the community the importance of art and artists and free speech and freedom of expression. And it was really a moment when the museum shone through, and the integrity of the organization was a point of pride for everyone in the community. So it was really quite special from that perspective. But every one of these projects is near and dear in some way. So I would be happy to, and I know others on the call would be happy to take any questions that anyone has.
Absolutely. Chime in if you have any questions. What was your favorite Project Atrium and why? Anyone? This one, Sean Thurston. While through the years we've tried to maintain a diverse group of artists, international or national, international. We sometimes have programmed in some local artists, Jacksonville artists. So Sean Thurston is a local Jacksonville muralist. He came in and did this wonderfully energetic piece as part of the One Spark Festival in 2014. And this was quite a theatrical event. We had a 40-foot curtain. And the artist worked behind. So unlike previous iterations where you could witness the installation, you could not witness this installation. It was behind a 40-foot curtain because we had to keep it secret until the time in the festival when we could unveil it. And so it was quite dramatic when we pulled back that curtain, and this was there in the atrium, and that was the first that anyone had ever seen of the project.
I remember that. Maybe one of the things that would be interesting to hear about, Ben, is, you've been on this journey with Project Atrium for the whole 10 years. So it's interesting to consider, the more current iterations in the series vis-a-vis the original iterations. And what you see as the key DNA of this initiative that continue to be important today as much as they were back in 2010, 2011.
That's a great point. That's a great question. And I think that those key elements are still the same as the original conceptual framework, that, really the intention is to challenge an artist to deal with the scale of this space. How do you how do you work on a site-specific piece given the scale of 30 by 30 by 40, which is immense, and it's so I think that's a real growth experience for many artists to have to contend with a space like that and to have to use the space fully. So I think, throughout the years, and whether it's current projects or older projects, some are more or less successful in terms of their use of the verticality or the depth of the space. Some artists like Ethan Moreau, like you see here, preferred to, just use the wall and actually use a very small portion of the wall, and thereby had a lot of negative space that really almost oppressed the drawing. So you can use the scale of the space to your benefit by the absence of artwork in the space. So there's all sorts of different ways, but I think that remains a challenge for artists, and it remains a growth experience for artists.
All the paint on the wall projects are still there. They're underneath layers of paint. That's an interesting perspective.
We did talk about that, Dave. Actually, we thought that at some point it would be interesting to do an excavation. Yeah. And there's, in fact, an artist that we visited in St. Louis when I was at the museum who did such projects, and we thought, let's wait till the 25th anniversary when we have enough information to excavate, and wouldn't it be interesting to have her do that as an installation?
The point that Ben made there about that the space can challenge the artist, it can also bring the artist to a new place. It may or may not be the case that sometimes you need to not quite share with the artist just how big it is when you're trying to get them to commit to being part of it. Because the idea of a 40-foot square cube can be a little overwhelming. And sometimes when, as a curator, that the artist, can not only go there, but can go there with bells on. But maybe the artist themselves is not quite ready to think that they might be able to do that or should do that. I can tell you that in one studio visit with an artist that actually ended up exhibiting in Project Atrium, I was standing in their studio and they were showing me sketches, three-dimensional sketches of some different works they had. And she said to me, Kathleen, just how big is the space? I've seen the video, I've seen the images, I've seen the SketchUp, but tell me about it in real life, standing in the space. I said, you know what? It's not as big as you'd think. Don't worry about it. It's like kind of a few times bigger than this space, but don't worry about it. That'll become clear when you're standing in the space. She said, okay. That was what she needed to hear at that moment. Had I actually told her the size and scope and reality of the space, that's where the project would have ended. And as it happens, she stood in the space, having already agreed to it, gasped and turned to me and said, you lied. You lied really well, but you lied, and I'm so glad you did. So sometimes we have to be a little more creative, bringing our artists along.
So everyone, I've just given a 5-minute warning. We're about 5 minutes away from having to transition to our next portion of the preview, which everybody's welcome to stay on for. So I want to thank everybody for attending. I don't know if there's any final thoughts from anyone who didn't get to say them, but I want to thank everybody. I want to thank our speakers. Okay, well, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Marcel, for tuning in from Milwaukee. Thank you to all of our past supporters and patrons who have been involved in significantly supporting this exhibition series.